Hey everybody, before we get started on today's sort of video lesson for word processing, I did want to run over a couple of different things with you because there's probably a good chance that this is the first video that you've seen. Not too many instructors do this just yet, so I did want to kind of clarify how this is going to work. Today we're going to be covering some basics in word processing, and the first one we're going to do is Microsoft Word, which is in the Office suite, and then we're going to cover Google Docs and then OpenOffice, and you'll see two different links for those two. This one is probably the longest. The reason being is that it is by far the most dynamic of all the tools. This is the one that gets used in business and science, for home use. Everybody uses this thing. And while that is still true to an extent in the schools, Google Docs is starting to take over some of the K-12 environment, and a lot of, it really depends on who you talk to, but a lot of the education speculators, I guess, or futurists, if you call them, think that Microsoft is actually on its way out as far as the K-12 schools go, because it is a very expensive software. If you haven't noticed that already, it can cost you a couple $100 for the suite, and you may or may not use all of those tools. So what we're going to find is that while Google Docs is starting to penetrate the K-12 market, this one is still used. It's still functional. There are still really good things it can do that Google Docs and OpenOffice just can't. So what we're going to do is kind of explore those areas. This one is the longest. Like I said, I'm guessing it'll probably be around 25 minutes or so. You can pause this video and come back to it at another time. You can, log out, make a note of where you were, and come back. Whatever you need to do. But just know that this one is a little bit longer, and then the other two are only going to be about 10 or 15 minutes. So shouldn't take a terribly long time. But this way, we can bypass the lecture part in class, and then when you're actually working on your document and you run into trouble, somebody's going to be there to help you. So that's kind of the advantage. One of the things that I want to point out here as we're looking at this document, first of all, I'm extremely informal in these things. They're not scripted, so if you see me go off on a tangent or whatever, don't be surprised. Your view might not be the same as mine. If you have an older version of Word, 2007 or even 2003, 2003 is just nothing like this at all. 2007 resembles it in look and feel a little bit, but not a whole lot. So it is important to know what the new tools are in 2010. We do have it in the classroom, so you'll be able to practice with it. But just realize that your version may be a little bit different. Also, you're going to see add-ons in mine that you may not have, and you're going to see that in PowerPoint. Not so much in Excel, but you will see that in PowerPoint too, because I have a lot of different tools that I use that integrate with Microsoft. So if you see something and then you notice that you don't have it, don't worry about it. There's nothing wrong with your system. I just have mine highly customized. So one of the examples here is the Google Cloud Connect, and that's because we're going to spend some time, obviously, on Google. And a lot of people have started putting their things on the cloud, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on, but basically it's a web location for all of your files. So you don't need those little jump drives. So if you're wondering why your iPad or your Android tablet or anything else doesn't contain a place for your jump drive, that's why. So many people are loading everything onto their cloud now, and as long as they have internet access, they're good to go. And we'll talk a little bit about Wi-Fi access across the country as we move on through the semester as well. But you will see this every time I type out a document in Word, it automatically saves to my Google Cloud. So if I ever forget something or something happens in Blackboard or whatever, I can always access it that way too. So it just gives you a little added security. Okay, so for the Microsoft Word, a lot of these things you guys are going to already know, and I'm only going to touch on these tools. As you come to class and you start working on the tool assessment, that's when you're really going to get into the details of how this works, what it actually does when you put it on there. I'm not going to go into all that detail because you're going to do it yourself, and we don't want to be redundant during a summer class. So if you look at the File tab, and remember in the old version, it had all these things, file, home, insert, all that stuff, and you would click it and there would be a drop down, just like there is here for File. And in File you find the same things you always found here, the Save, which they still have as a floppy disk. I haven't seen one of those in years, but you've got a Save As option, you've got Open, Close, New, Print, all of that basic kind of stuff is all there. Okay. If you go into your Home tab, this is the one that actually opens when you open Microsoft Word. And what's nice is that it used to, if you would click on the main item, let's say you would click on Insert, and then it would have all of these different subsections, and then you could roll over those and it would give you another subset of tools. So what you might note about this one is when I look on Home tab, for example, it still has all of those subsections, but now they're down here. So it's got clipboard, it's got font, it's got paragraph, styles, all those things. And what's nice about that is that it's taken on the very important notion of icons and visuals. We are all about that lately. It's not that the text isn't important too, but when we're looking for quick technology fixes, all we want is an icon because our eyes are drawn to it quickly. We can figure it out and we can move on. And that is something that they've really taken hold of. So you can see here they've got, you know, a little paintbrush to format the painter. They've got the clipboard for pasting. There's no content here for me to type right now, otherwise it would be able to, well, see if I start doing this, I can go ahead and copy it, then if I select it. So you can see some of these tools are going to be blocked out if there's really nothing you can do to it. So it's not that the tool is broken or anything, you just can't use it at this point. All right, and then it's got a font section. This is where you find all of your formatting stuff. You can change it into any one of a million different fonts that you want to use. We'll talk a little bit about font use during class and what these different fonts actually say when we get to our presenting content area. And then you can change the size here. And again, anytime you see in Word, you see a little arrow pointing down, that means there are more choices available to you. So otherwise, it doesn't really give you any other choice, like bold, italics. Those are all things that, there's only one choice there. So it does give you underline here, but you can see there's a little option, and now it gives you a ton of underlining options as well. So you can make this sucker pretty customized. All right, so if you look on the font, again, it allows you to strike through. You can do subscript, a superscript, depending on what you need to do for your class or worksheet, test, you know, whatever it is that you're using Word for. Then there are text effects here, and this is something relatively new. I don't think 2007 had this, but you can basically put new colors and everything into your font, and you can shadow it, you can reflect it, you can really get fancy with this thing. And that's nice for things like headings for worksheets or to bring extra information into it. It's really important to know about these visual tools. I would say even more than anything else as far as being a teacher goes, because what you're trying to do is grab that student's attention. And if you're giving them something in a Word document, you've already half lost them. So you need to figure out a way to really make your content stand out, to make the worksheets dynamic so that students can really interact with it and understand it a lot better. Now, you may only have a black and white printer in your office too. That's also important to note. But as schools start getting learning management systems like Moodle, D2L, Blackboard, you're going to see this more often because then students can use their computers and they can see all of the color that you want them to see, and it's not going to cost you anything as far as color printing goes, which is nice. Okay, some of our other options here, you can grow your font size up and down. You can highlight your text, which is nice. You can change your colors, and they do give you, excuse me, I think I'm coming with a cold. You do have a set of choices. There are standard colors, and then there are theme colors. And sometimes that's just fine. Sometimes it's not good to have too many choices. But if you really want a lot of choices, you can check this whole area here, and it puts all the colors together in groupings, which is really nice. And then you can see what the new one and what the current one actually looks like, so you can compare them. You can get really fancy and customize that down to some incredibly specific things. So yeah, you can really get nuts with this. But it gives you lots of options, which is good. Let's see, you can clear all of your formatting out there. When you move to the paragraph section, same choices as we had before. You can left, justify, center, right. You can bullet point, and the nice thing is it's not just regular bullets. You've got a whole bullet library going on here, so if you want check marks instead of a bullet, arrows, whatever this doohickey is, I'm really not sure what that is, but you know, something cute and different, and students tend to appreciate that. You can also do the numbering, and again, it gives you the options of just the number with the dot, number with the enclosure. It's got letters, it's got Roman numerals, you know, you've got all kinds of different options there too. All right, and I'm just going to go over the ones that I think you're probably going to use most often. This line spacing, which does become an issue. 2010 automatically gives you a certain amount of space between paragraphs, and you may or may not want any of that stuff. So if you click down here, you can see that it's marked to 1.15 for the spacing between the lines. You can make it single spaced, 1.5, double, triple, and you can add a space foregraph, you can remove the space, there are lots of things you can do there. And then we've got shading, so if you want the background to be a certain color, that's another option here. Your styles are all listed, and there are a ton of choices. These are nice if you have headings, if it's a particularly long document, and it's not used all that much by instructors. It really kind of depends on what you're doing. Certainly for professional papers and things like that, I think about the dissertation, I use this all the time because, as we'll see later, you can incorporate those into a table of contents, and so it can make it really easy for you, which is good. Okay, you can also change your themes here. You can actually go through a different color theme if you want to include that. You can use different sets of fonts here, and that makes everything just more uniform is what they're trying to do there. Okay, the other option here, which is really nice and a lot of people tend to forget about it, is the find feature. So if you've got a really, really long document, or you've got a series of issues, I always think about writing recommendation letters. So I use that all the time. I do have a really basic format for all of my students when I write recommendation letters for them. Now, I fill all of that in with detailed information about that particular student, but it follows the same format. The first paragraph explains how I know the student, how long they've been doing whatever. The second one explains all of the interactions that I've had with that student and why they'd be a good candidate. And the final paragraph is where they could go from here and what their possibilities are. So what I have to do then is to find, because I use the same general format, I have to find and replace the students' names. I really don't want to write one for Tim and then have to change it over for Malik and not realize that I did not change, I changed the wrong name and there's still a section with Tim on there, which is not good. So if you go to your replace area here, you can find one word, replace it with another, and it does it for the entire document, which is really, really handy. Trying to think of instances where you would use that in the classroom for classroom documents, but maybe that's something we could talk about in class, because I can't really think of anything that's going to be so text heavy that you won't be able to find it. But it's a nice, quick, easy tool. If you do have, even if you download documents from, say, a publisher, a textbook publisher, and they give you a lot of information, sometimes you're just looking for one specific area. That's a very nice way to do that. Okay. We've also got the insert options here, so you've got page options you can do, and this is really nice. They've really stepped up when it comes to formatting all of your work. They provide a series of cover pages that you can choose from, so you can make it really fancy. You can insert a blank page. You can do a page break, which a lot of people, I still see people hard returning all the way down until they see the break. Don't do that. It's just a mess, and it messes up your formatting. So if you just hit the page break, then you want the page break there. The table feature is really, really nice. It used to be that you had to write in or type in the rows and the columns that you needed. It was a huge pain because you had to then kind of think ahead of time and you weren't really sure. This one, you could just roll over all of your different options here, and you can just hit left click on it and it shows up. And then you can see it automatically goes over to your design tab, and so you can see that there are tons of options available to you here, and just by clicking on them, you can see what works and what doesn't. You can change your shading around here if you want. You can change your border options. You can change just about anything about it. You could spend all day playing with this. Your pen color can be different. You can have different sizes for your for the lines. Lots and lots of fancy stuff here. So that's nice. All right, going back to the insert area. Let's say I'm going to go ahead and look at my illustrations, which again we talked about how important visuals are. So if I have a picture on my computer that I want to save and go ahead and include it in a worksheet or a document for PD purposes or whatever, you can go ahead and do that. Just be aware, and I always have to preface this, that make sure that you know where that picture came from. If you took it, fine. That's totally fine. It's your work. It's not a problem at all. If somebody else took it and you're using this as a worksheet, you need to make sure that you have their permission, or if you got it off of a website, that it is cleared for copyright. And we'll spend some time at the end of the term talking about copyright, but it's extremely important. Everybody is hypersensitive about it these days because of all the technology that's used. We're definitely in a sharing mood these days, which is wonderful, but you got to know what is and is not okay to share. You just always, and I always got to make sure that you just check with the author if it's not very clear on the site that you're working from. So, and a lot of people get confused. They think that just because you're using it for educational purposes that it's cleared. It's not. Okay, so just know that. If you have your own pictures, fantastic. Go ahead and use them. If you don't, though, their clip art library has gotten really good. So if you click on that, you can see this little widget, I guess would be called, over here on the right that talks about clip art. So if I wanted to do a search for, let's say, presidents, I'm doing something on a president. Okay. And I click go, and it'll take me to all file types, but if I just want illustrations or I just want photos, I can go ahead and do that. The nice thing about clip art is it's free to use. You're using it within Word, so you're good to go. Alright, so if I can look down here and see some of my options, and let's say, cool, I've got, who do I have here? I'll just go ahead and grab Mr. Lincoln here. So I click on it, and then he automatically comes over here, and I can go ahead and move him down if I want to, since he's not really taking up some space on my table there. But this gives me an option to use an image within my my document. I can go ahead and change the size of it if I want to. It keeps relatively uniform. So that's particularly handy. There are lots of different options here that you can go to. You can see clearly, I mean, when I use a term like presidents, it comes up with just about every president we've ever had, obviously, and even right down to the ones that are in South Dakota. So you can see there's all kinds of options there. When you look at clip art next to it, what I've seen a lot of people do, which is very clever, is using shapes. So if you click on shapes, you can see these ones are the ones that are most used by me anyway. But then there are lines, rectangles, there are basic shapes here. So lines are really good for connecting different ideas, different logic. And so you can point to something very specific. You can say, hey, look right here, he had, I don't know, crazy hairdo or whatever. Okay, and then you can identify that. And you can see that this is marked as a blue line, but then if I click on it, I can go and check different items here. So I can make this darker. I could make it red. So I can make it really stand out. Remember, if you're printing it, you want to always be aware of how that's going to work. Some of your other options, though, particularly if you're talking about information, let's stick with the president theme. I'm going to go scroll down here, and I can see there are flowchart options, stars and banners, and callouts. And callouts are, I think, what I'm going to use now. Although we'll talk about flowcharts for obvious reasons. There are lots of good reasons to use flowcharts. So I'll go ahead and click on this little rounded rectangular callout. And what it does is, you would think it automatically pops up, but it doesn't. I need to start where I expect the little part to be, the little sort of, I don't know what you'd call it, the little bottom section here, where it's going to call out. And I can go ahead and point that to his mouth, let's say. Okay. And so now I've got, and you can see it brings me over to my formatting section, so it automatically brings you to what you need to do your work, which is really nice. You don't have to go hunting for it anymore. It is set to be blue here, but I can make it black, I can make it white. You can make it any number of colors here, so let's go ahead and change it to purple. Alright, now what happens is you've got word art styles here, you've got all kinds of different information. You can add more shapes, it just brings you to whatever it thinks you need. So I'm going to go ahead and create a text box within here, and I'm going to say okay. Now let's take a look at this here real quick, because I'll demonstrate to you why this stuff is important. Okay. Which one do you think students are going to remember when it comes time to take the test? That's what's really, that's really what this is all about. When you've got a picture of him here and you've got a text and a caption next to it, when you make it visual, you play a little bit with the wording, you make it a little more dynamic, that is going to resonate with students a lot better than a single line of text. So that's what's important about knowing all of these different image options for you. So just kind of give you an example. Some of the other ones that are really good, SmartArt, which is wonderful. If you do anything with flowcharts or hierarchy of